Hi, everybody. I'm not moved to do this very often, but of course, all the shit that's going down on social media, in the national media, and the breaking news earlier today that Odell Beckham Jr. was excused from practicing and basically excused. I wanted to point something out that, I guess it bothers me, that the stuff that you hear is so one-sided that you don't get a bigger picture of this. For example, the Browns were talking to the Saints about trading OBJ, but it couldn't go anywhere. And now there's a lot of people suggesting that the bottom line there is that he couldn't have passed the physical no matter where he went. All right? Let me point out something, and it's great. Amsterdam, you can keep me up on what's happening in the presser, but I want this not only for now, because, I don't expect people to be laying around here watching in the middle of the day, but afterwards. Because the way this is going to play out, I think that people ought to know at least some other stuff that is not being reported at all. Okay. Odell Beckham as a player has a real history, okay? He burst onto the scene in 2014 with the New York Giants, and he had a fantastic rookie year. But since his rookie year, his production has dropped every year. These are things you're never going to hear anywhere in the media because it ruins the entire narrative for the league and for the networks. In 2014, Odell Beckham Jr. averaged 108.8 yards per game in receiving yardage. He had 91 receptions. His catch percentage, which is defined as receptions divided by targets, was 70%. After that rookie year, things changed. His catch percentage went down 10 percentage points to 60. The next year, down to 59. His last year in New York, he hovered at 61. However, his long receptions, the ones that everybody seems to remember him for, his longest pass reception, 80 yards in 2014, 87 in 2015, 75 in 2016, then down to 48 and 41. He actually had an 89-yard with Cleveland in 2019. Here's what I want to get at with all of these statistics, which are not opinions, they're facts. Odell Beckham Jr., when he came to Cleveland, came here for a reason. He got injured in New York. And he did nothing about that injury, and he repeatedly refused to have surgery on the one dislocated shoulder he already had. Now he has a second one. And I have no reason to believe he would pass the physical going to any other team as far as looking at him as an immediate impact player. But it goes even deeper than that as far as the statistics are concerned. He started out 1,305 yards in his rookie season, 1,450, then 1,367. Those first 3 years with the New York Giants are who Odell Beckham basically was. But as time moved on, and it's not just in Cleveland, folks, it's everywhere. Right across the board, his numbers were dropping. By the time he had his final year in New York, he had a season of 1,052 yards of reception, still very good, and 1,035 in his his first year in Cleveland. It took him 16 games to get that. It took him 12 games to get that the year before in New York. His catch percentage dropped to a 55.6%. in the Hugh Jackson disaster year of 2019. After that, with the Browns, his yards per reception remained amazingly intact. The thing that really bothers me is when they say, oh, Cleveland ruined this guy's legacy because they're not using him right. His average yards per catch in his rookie year were 14 yards, 15 yards. His third year, 13 and a half. His fourth year, 12. His next year, 13.7. His first year with Cleveland, 14. Last year, 13.9. And this year, 13.6. There's a difference, though. He's playing with 2 shoulder separations. And he has refused to get surgery on the first one. He's simply not the same player he used to be. And for all of this horseshit talk about, oh, Cleveland ruins careers. What happened to Andre Rison after he left Cleveland? Did somebody pick him up and did he revive his career? Did Josh Gordon do that? If anybody really thought this guy could be a big impact, they'd have gotten him. He can't pass a physical. The whole thing is just another national narrative to degrade the city of Cleveland and to have something to talk about. It's unbelievable to me. You have a wide receiver who killed somebody drunk driving, who's no longer with the Raiders. A very different kind of explosive receiver. Sorry. You have a quarterback who's been accused by countless women of groping them, and he stays with the Texans. But the primary story in the headlines is OBJ's father. The one thing we do know about Beckham is that he started out in the biggest city you can start out at. When you have a big rookie year like that, it doesn't make you a better player. It makes you more aware of what media attention is and what it is to be a big man on campus. That's what it does. And when you get used to that kind of attention, it's hard to get rid of it. Ask, J.R. Smith about the New York thing. Pretty soon you're untying people's shoelaces at the free throw line. Pretty soon you're doing anything to get attention. Well, if OBJ wanted attention in Cleveland, it could have started by catching fucking passes. But no, it doesn't work that way. Any way you can get it, if you got to use your father, anything it takes to get attention. And attention is not constructive and it's not positive. You've heard me criticize the lack of delegatory skills of Kevin Stefanski, something that young coaches have to learn the longer they stay in the league. But Odell Beckham is not a casualty of Kevin Stefanski. Believe me, if he could give anything to this offense, it would have been done by now. We maxed out what we could get from Rashard Higgins, for God's sakes, and Kaderil Hodge. Is this an issue that, OBJ is just covered all the time? Well, yes, he's covered all the time because he's injured. He can't use the upper half of his body to separate from a goddamn cornerback. They're playing goddamn press coverage mano a mano, and all his weak sauce father can come up with is a couple of lame-looking examples of where his son was open, not the ones where he stumbled in the open field or ridiculously dropped the passes that were thrown to him. It's irritating to me because you gotta look at the facts. Why didn't anyone pick him up? I mean, do you really think the Browns were holding out for a great offer? Give me a break. No, No, they would have taken a couple of pieces of Hubba Bubba bubble gum. For goodness sakes. You know, what I can tell you is this. Does this help the Browns? No. Does it hurt the Browns? Yeah, because the publicity is like the worst publicity in the world when the national media and local media is jammed about it. And let me say something else about the local media scene. Mary Kay Cabot is just a traitorous person. Just a disturbingly lowbrow yellow journalist. If you want a story that's as the world turns, read her shit. She knows nothing about sports. She knows nothing at all. That's why her Twitter feed is consistently 45 minutes late on important stories, because she just generates stories from other people. She doesn't know anything. She doesn't know anyone to talk to. It's a waste. I just look at statistics and facts. This guy has been on a slow decline. This will be his 7th, 8th year in the league, and he's approaching 29, 30 years of age, and it's an old 29 to 30 years of age when you refuse to have surgery on critical injuries that continue moving and creating arthritic condition. If you looked into that bad shoulder, I guarantee you there is more arthritis there than you could shake a stick at. And there's a reason why the Giants gave up on him. And it wasn't that they were going to start instantly winning without him. They stopped winning a while ago. Didn't want to put up with the sideshow. And they didn't want to put up with the sideshow after he put up a 1,000-yard season. There comes a point it's just not worth it. I'll also say this. The name Jimmy Haslam isn't coming into the equation, but I can guarantee you what he's telling his people. Get rid of this guy. Browns don't want to have anything to do with this. Not at this point. I think they were treading lightly. Now they can't even afford to tread lightly. You know, and this is a scary thought, Jim. And hi, Jim. How you doing up there in Tampa area? That's not an apt replacement, is it? The only thing I bet on Anthony Schwartz is if he was running away from somebody. And not on a football field. I mean, like if somebody were chasing him, trying to rob him, and he was running away, I'd bet on Anthony Schwartz because he can just run in a straight line real fast. The fact of the matter is if the Cleveland Browns were aware of this, the front office, it was incumbent upon the front office to draft wide receivers in this last draft, not a third-round guy. We were heavy going for defense, and I understand that. So it will have to be done this next draft. But you didn't get the player that was in his first 2 years, 3 years in New York. That player is not alive anymore. His name lives on. And we have idiots like RG3 who are coming on ESPN and saying the Browns have ruined his legacy. And it's like, is that what we're playing the game for? I thought there was this trophy, you know, silly me. I thought there was this Lombardi trophy, you know, the one that Tom Brady can count in multiples. I thought that's the legacy. LeBron's championship in Cleveland. Now that's part of a legacy. What is Odell Beckham's legacy? Except me. Is being notorious part of a legacy? I guess if you're a Kim Kardashian fan, the answer is yes. OBJ has been talked more about and done less. Well, he's right there with the Kardashians. And if you can get that kind of fame going your way, you can get that fame going your way, and people will talk about you all the time. But eventually, I mean, you can change into a woman. Bruce Jenner proved that. And that only lasts so long. Where people are like, oh God, I don't want to see that anymore. And the days are waning for OBJ. The days are waning. He's either going to have to try to get the surgery to come back to play or forever be nothing in the NFL. And that's the bottom line. If this presser is happening, is anybody watching what they're saying? So, you know, and this doesn't surprise me either. I mean, you know, people who are of low class are of low class. And Mike Tomlin is somebody who's just, you know, they're going nowhere. Go ahead. Why don't you give Big Ben, Odell Beckham Jr., and see if Big Ben can throw it that far? Mongoloid. God. But everyone's got to have an opinion and step in. I just wanted to look at the statistics. I mean, to tell you the truth, I know who Odell Beckham Jr. was when he played in New York. I didn't dwell on it. But he seems to be wanting to be remembered as the guy who makes the one-handed catches, because that's all he was doing in practice prior to the last season. And he's like, oh, I can still do that. You see, doesn't that make me say, hey, put me up on your Instagram. I'm catching the ball. Hey, look how fast I can run in a treadmill. Put that up on your Instagram. The games aren't won and lost on social media, you dumb fuck. It's on the field. Can you produce? He's not healthy enough to produce. I don't want him on the Cleveland Browns. I don't want him anywhere near the Cleveland Browns organization. And these things, when these people are sideshows, they do this like Josh Gordon. They do this at the worst possible moment. I want to be reinstated. I want to be reinstated. And then when you reinstate them, they immediately go out and get high. And they're gone again. It's like they want the publicity. They just want to be able to read about themselves on the national media, and the national media will keep feeding that beast. It doesn't make them better players, and more importantly, it doesn't make them better men, better people. It doesn't work that way. The whole thing is just a rotten shame. And how is it going to affect the team? Well, I mean, you go to work. You strap it up and you go to work. And, you know, as far as, you know, if I were Jarvis Landry, I'd be thinking more about the passes I fumbled and dropped than I'd be worried about a guy who refuses to get surgery. I mean, Jarvis Landry's willing to do what it takes to get on the football field. His buddy and soulmate, best friend forever, is not willing to do that. So to hell with him. And any player who wants to side with him, and if that's got to do with why Rashard Higgins strolled off sides for no reasons and didn't run his patterns hard, get rid of him too. This is one season. Put it in perspective. I know we wanted more. We were one game away from the AFC Championship game, one game away, and we wanted to take that next step. Put this year out of your mind. It's not about repeating what we did last year. What we did last year was a combination of coming out of nowhere, taking people by surprise, being very lucky, winning high-scoring, close games, and learning a whole new offensive scheme. Well, in the offseason, the whole league learned the offensive scheme. Forget about this year by year quest. I told you in the beginning of the season, there are lousy teams in the NFL, the Detroit Lions. There are average teams in the NFL, Minnesota Vikings. There are good teams in the NFL, which would be like the Browns and the Bengals, and they're good. Any given week they can win. Then there are very good teams. That would be like the Titans, and we'll see how they hold on without Derrick Henry. The very good teams are teams that are, like Buffalo would be another one. Kansas City would be another one. But the elite, the great teams, the ones with Super Bowls. We were looking to make a jump from being a good team to being a very good team this year. That was the plan. That was the idea. People said, well, we were 11-5 last year, the 17-game season. We did win some close games. Most of us were picking the Browns at 11-6 now, weren't we? Because we knew the schedule would be harder. The competition would be tougher because they'd be more educated about what it is that we are doing offensively. And we had a bunch of rookies coming out on the field on the defensive side of the ball. All I'm interested in is the climb. You can't win a Super Bowl if you don't get into the playoffs, and you got to fill the holes on your roster. Odell Beckham is just a distraction. All of this is just a distraction. Mary Kay Cabot is a not very attractive distraction. This is all it is. The attention needs to be on where the weaknesses are on the team. Lack of speed at wide receiver. Okay? That's a huge one. We play way too slow. And we got to have backup linemen because our offensive linemen have a tendency to drop like flies every year. Conklin has been injury prone since he got into the league with Jacksonville. Look it up. You can say the same thing about Treader in Green Bay. Had all kinds of games missed in Green Bay. And they're all playing hurt all year. Jedrick Wills the last 2 years. They're all playing hurt. You cannot go from Jedrick Wills to James Hudson III. You need more fortification. And that's, part of the weakness of the team. You want to blame Baker Mayfield? The amazing thing about half of the fans who are in Cleveland, or the loudest ones, is that they don't remember the Deshaun Kaisers. And you know why? Because they turned it off. They tuned it out. They were off the bandwagon all those years when those guys who couldn't play the position were on the field playing the position. And RG3, his non-legacy, being a one-year phenom and then a guy who the game crippled, we had to watch him limping around. Johnny Manziel, need I say more? Why didn't these people receive the wrath and the antipathy of fans like Baker Mayfield does? What is it that we take the one guy? I mean, what would have happened if Bernie Kosar stayed in Cleveland and his body was getting more and more beaten up? And what if the Browns fans had to see an aging Bernie Kosar? Would they have turned on him to Baker Mayfield's the best quarterback we had since Bernie Kosar? Fact. And he's just gotten here, really. He's a relatively new guy, just on the first time that he's gone 2 years back-to-back with an offensive scheme. And for all the shortcomings of Stefanski, as far as his one-dimensional, non-delegatory style, Baker Mayfield is still delivering some wins for this organization, which was more than the other players ever did. Why? Why this anger? If you set your goals up way too high before the season begins, maybe you think somebody's going to hand you the Lombardi trophy, but it doesn't work that way. It's a coin flip, man. You got to get to that game. We got to the game 7 with Golden State when the Cavaliers won the championship. Getting to game 7, we had no chance. You listen to the media, they have no chance. Game 7 in Golden State, over. Game over. They got Draymond Green back. They got Steph Curry. They got them all. Cavaliers, LeBron's old. He's old and the guy worn down, and there's no way. Got to get to the game. So all I'm interested in is getting to the game. And that may be the only time at the dance you get. But let's see if you take advantage of it. But I mean, honestly, take a look at the Browns roster and take a look at the wide receivers. Do you really think that Baker Mayfield likes throwing to a crunch down field that's 15 yards long and however wide a football field is, with a bunch of receivers who can't run below a 4.5 40? Do you really think that that's his idea of where he wants to be? But he doesn't open his mouth. He doesn't make excuses. He goes out there and he plays. And he does the best he can do. And some days he does very well, and some days it's tougher. And his teams scheme up and realize that the Browns have nobody who can basically impersonate Linda Ronstadt, Blue Bayou. They can't run by anybody. They're going to shrink the field down, and that's what's happened. Browns need wide receivers who can run patterns with speed. Another thing is these guys who are on the field right now, Rashard Higgins included, who I used to be high on, I'm not anymore. He's not running his patterns hard. He's not digging on the break. He's not planting and exploding off the break. Schwartz is just flat out afraid. Anything that breaks into the middle of the field, he slows down and stops running. Put the blame where it belongs and cut this narrative out once and for all. Share this video because we have legitimate concerns and problems, but OBJ was never one of them, except his big fucking mouth, except his need for attention. The fact that he told the press freely that he refused to get surgery for old injuries and now for new injuries. That's all I have to say. Facts. They count. I'll see you again on Friday, and we'll talk about the upcoming Bengals game. Thanks for hanging in with me. Hasta la vista, Pastorheads. Have a good rest of the day.